everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Wang, founder, operator at Empathogenics. Thank you for joining me, Stephanie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Joe, for having me on the show.
Oh,
Really
you
honored.
are welcome. This is one of our first episodes on this topic. I'll let you reach it later. But I think this is also our first podcast where the guest was in Madrid, Spain. So I'm excited about that too. So, Stephanie, let's start with a little bit about you. And like, what was your journey previously to this kind of, bumping into psychedelics and pathogenics, et cetera, and, finding out more about this topic that you're on about now?
Absolutely. I'm from Hong Kong, actually, and I started my career in corporate finance, and that was fantastic because it was lucrative, but it just didn't feed the soul. And I switched gears and I went into film for some time. But really, my passion has always been in consciousness and personal transformation. And a lot of it had to do with sort of, my childhood experience and just dealing with pain. And, as a lot of us probably go through, there are certain experiences in life that, you're trying to work out and understand in order to understand yourself. And so, I went through, shall I say, a really catalytic experience in that process. And it brought me ever closer to being extremely passionate about consciousness, because I just didn't feel people should be feeling this way in the world. It's just not what we're meant to be
Right.
in a depressed or a sort of contracted state, right? And, I was fortunate enough to come across psychedelics and plant medicine about 10 years ago. And at the time, I was sort of doing my own thing. I had a small digital agency. I was doing content strategy, digital marketing, but it really didn't fulfill me, because what I really wanted to do was bring my work into consciousness, or consciousness into work, and actually just merge the two, because I was like, this is crazy. This is not a side hobby, right? And so that happened. And my very, very first plant ceremony experience in a shamanic context was with Kanna, which is Scaletium tortuosum. And most people, when they think of shamanic plant ceremony, they think of ayahuasca, they think of Wachuma, San Pedro, and psilocybin even, and many more. But interestingly enough, it was Kanna. And that was a game changer for many reasons. And since then, I've been a psychonaut myself. I've had done 100 different ceremonies, done all kinds of plants and all of that, and had those experiences, which are amazing. That was incredibly life-changing as well. But the first introduction to this space was actually through Kanna. And why it was so special is from a shamanic standpoint, you have medicines that are either heart, mind, body, or spirit. So, for example, ayahuasca, psilocybin, that's a spirit medicine. It takes you out of the body. Most of us don't need more mind medicine because we're so good to be, in our minds anyway. And Kanna is actually heart medicine. So it was amazing to experience Kanna in a ceremonial setting where it was incredibly expansive and heart opening. That's literally how it feels. You just feel this oneness, and you feel enormous love. You feel everything around you is love. Everyone is love. And what it also had an effect on is how, we were relating to each other in that setting. So imagine that you're in a place when, of course, nothing matters. Nobody cares what you look like, where you came from, what job you have, how much money you make, what social strata. Nobody cares. All you care about is meeting each other in that heart-centered space, in a very human and intimate space. So imagine how beautiful that's like. And what is interesting is that, the experience, in this ceremonial setting with Kanna was just the whole night was like that. You end up sort of cuddling with everyone. It's kind of awesome. And there is another deeper thing that was happening. What it was actually doing, it was less about the experience itself, because that was, an intense sort of 5-6 hours. It was really more about coming into community, because it was reminding us that we are a human community, and this is actually how, in the highest form, how we can relate to each other. It's a possibility. It can be a reality. And it takes away all the masks. It takes away all the other stuff that doesn't matter. And it's incredibly supportive. It's incredibly energizing. It's incredibly nourishing to be in that space. So that was my
I'm fresh off of Burning Man, by the way. So
awesome. How was it?
Wonderful. So like a lot of what you're saying is really coming up for me. Things I experienced. Yeah.
And Burning Man is a great example as well, in a different context. But I think as looking at going through all your other guests in on your podcast, we talk about wholeness a lot, right? And coming back into that wholeness, and that is being human. We can be there. We just don't normally experience homeostasis. We don't even know what that feels like, because we're so stressed out. We're so out of our bodies. You ask someone, how do you feel? And, they kind of think about it, but it always goes to the head, and it's not in the heart, in the body. So Kanna is a beautiful plant ally that actually helps us do that. And, what it helped me personally do was really, remove a lot of my own blockages to love and intimacy. And it just was a great teacher that way. And, over the years, with many of the other amazing plant teachers like ayahuasca and psilocybin and such, that obviously amplified and complemented all of it together. But I will never forget that my very first ceremony was with Kanna, and how, even in that moment, I thought, wow, this is what the world needs. Because again, we're very good at escaping. We're very good at all of that. We're not so good in being present, and not so good in being our hearts and having that head-heart harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how I sort of came to Kanna and came to psychedelics. And, eventually, at that time, and then I joined a company called Evolver, and we birthed the Alchemist Kitchen, which is a we had live events, and there was a lot of education.
Did we get a chance to talk about Evolver when we were together in Arizona there?
Not really, no.
So that was actually a big portion of my origins. I started
Really?
organizing Evolver Boston in probably 2008 or 9.
Okay.
And did a lot of meetups, a lot of like community organizing workshops.
Oh, awesome.
And I was like writing at Evolver, I think, a bunch. And it's like the sister magazine of Reality Sandwich at the time. So you must know Ken Jordan and a few of those other players.
Yes, of course.
There. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We worked
really
very,
cool.
very closely together. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was doing it in Boulder. I saw what they did in Georgia. That was, I think, their first big public event. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how do I not have this near me? That's the thing I want. So it was like, oh, those originators have to put in a lot of work to build that community they want to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, when we birthed the Alchemist Kitchen together, this was 2015, I want to say. This was a brick and mortar, an actual physical space. And, I really miss those days, the early days when we had just all these events live, and you could see everybody coming in from all walks of life. You have people coming from Wall Street, they're in their suits, they're super conservative. Then you have, the psychonauts, then you have like just all the herbal people, and it was, and all the witchy people. And it was just amazing because there was no judgment. And you could tell that everybody felt comfortable being in that space, because we're connecting on a level that has nothing to do with, what people looked like or what they, how they carried themselves. So, yeah, that's awesome that you were part of that. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's cool. We have that in common. Yeah. There's a whole number of those folks that I still think very fondly of. So I would love to connect with them in the future, but yeah, super cool to know we have that in common too.
Yeah, that is super cool.
So, now Empathogenics, like when did you decide to start building a company around Kanna? Or how did that come about for
So
you?
yeah, that happened 4 years ago. I had decided to leave the Alchemist Kitchen, leave Evolver, and wanted to do my own thing. And I felt this incredible calling to bring Kanna out of ceremonial context into people's daily lives in an accessible way, because I'm like, what if I can bring somehow in whatever small way that I can, big way hopefully, but with humility I say this, it's like, how can, knowing what I know, how can I bring this to more people in a way that is accessible? And 4 years ago, I started to do R&D, have an amazing team, and we say this is very nature inspired and very much honoring the indigenous traditions and healing wisdom around using Kanna, and the traditional peoples um, who continue to have Kanna as part of the center to their society are the Khoi and the San, the Khoisan people of South Africa. So that was we're like, and I feel like personally I owe a debt to indigenous communities, because they have been the stewards of many of these incredible plants, be they psychedelic or psychoactive, or not, or it doesn't even have to be that. But if we didn't have these stewards of this ancient medicine, we wouldn't have access to today. So we wanted to honor that. And thirdly, just I felt and continue to feel that this is what the world needs. We need more heart, we need more love, we need more empathy and compassion. And if there's a way, especially to help people de-stress, help lift their mood, and help manage everyday anxiety, on top of it, really helping them open their hearts as well, I really wanted to do that and sort of set that challenge for myself. And I'm very, very fortunate to, have working with me also an amazing team of scientists. So, our chief scientist is a molecular biologist, a biochemist, and flavor scientist. And so we're really combining what is given this amazing gift from nature, which is Kanna, plus the understanding from a spiritual standpoint what it means, and then also the science to back it up, which is how we started developing this product and ultimately fully launched it in July.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
yeah, and if I may, Joe,
Please.
I'd love to actually share more about the science side, that because I was talking a lot about the spiritual side and sort of the ritual and the indigenous side of how coming together in ceremony. But and what's interesting is from the scientific standpoint, it's an amazing plant for many reasons. Number one, it's a natural serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And its main alkaloids are mesembrine and mesembrinone. It also actually increases it's a serotonin releasing agent in some ways. So it acts on both sides. It prevents the reabsorption and it also increases the release. And that's because of a protein called VMAT2, which stands for vesicular monoamine transporter 2, which is a protein that transports neurotransmitters out of cells. So that's how it increases the availability. And what's also really interesting is that Kanna activates receptors for GABA, for opioids, for cholecystokinin, and for melatonin. So what that means is it calms brain activity, it lifts mood and the sense of well-being, in terms of the receptors for opioids. It actually prevents gut inflammation and suppresses hunger, which is the cholecystokinin. And it also improves sleep quality, which is the melatonin side. And not only that, it actually has this ability to give you this grounded sense of energy while keeping you calm, because of how mesembrinone inhibits an enzyme called PDE4. which stands for I hope I'm getting this right, phosphodiesterase 4. And that allows the body to resource more energy. So through all these mechanisms, it's why then even afterwards, if you take it afterwards, you don't have that crash, because what it does in conjunction, in sync, is it becomes an internal calibrator for your brain. It actually has this beautiful way of recalibrating you. So, if so, you're like, okay, well, effectively, what does it do? Effectively, what it does is it lowers stress and anxiety, it lifts mood, it helps you focus, and it gives you endurance, and it's a heart opener all at once. And so the indigenous Khoisan in South Africa, the way they use it traditionally is when they go on multi-day hunts. So you have a hunting party, everybody takes it. Why? Because it keeps the energy up, it lowers the stress, and it kind of coheres the team, because your heart is open, suddenly your vision is more acute, you're more focused, you can feel your hunting party, the other people in your hunting party, you can see the animal, and
This
you
is
can
a
go on
traditional
and
San
on.
use.
Sorry?
This is a traditional San people use
Yeah.
case? Yeah, great.
The Khoisan and the San, this is a traditional use case. And what they also do, because it actually helps suppress hunger and thirst, so they can actually go on these multi-day hunts and not being so concerned about getting
So
overly
Kalahari
hungry
Desert,
or
right?
tired.
So like not super hospitable environment. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's and they use it sort of socially too, because it has this great sort of joy, uplifting quality. So it's very central to their society. And yeah, and I just wanted to add that most people may not know this, is that the Khoisan and the San people are probably the most ancient. I mean, they have been around since the beginning of time for humanity. We're talking about 150,000 years. This is where the cradle of human civilization was.
Right. I know next to nothing about Khoi, but I know a little bit about the San. Everything I know about the San, fascinating. And I can't wait to learn more
tell
about
me,
the program.
share a little
So
bit
just
of
like
what you know.
So they were featured in this dance documentary, Five Rhythms Dance, with Gabrielle Roth.
Oh yes,
and they showed kind of their traditional healing kind of practices. So I just really impressive to see kind of how they like to operate. And yeah, so they would sing all day, and eventually the whole village would be singing by the end of the day and dancing, and that was their healing. So whenever somebody would get sick or there was sorrow in between relationships or something, that was their practice, and it was super beautiful to watch on film. So
yeah,
that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Incredible.
I think a couple other bits of trivia, but not much.
Well, it's something that we are going to be continually highlighting at Empathogenics, is, and we're only sourcing Kanna from suppliers that actually have a direct profit share with the Khoisan and the San people. And, we're also in the middle of arranging and completing a partnership with these groups on the front end as well. But this is so important, because I feel like the whole, if you understand that if we understand that we're actually interconnected to begin with, and to understand that we're actually part of this greater web of life, and there then comes a consciousness that reciprocity is very much part of that culture, right? And we talk, I'm sure you talk about regenerative culture as well on your program, but this is such a to me, the key to resolving a lot of our issues right now with the lack that we have on the planet, and climate issues and all of that, is really understanding how we're completely interconnected, and that we've lost this sacred, the understanding of the sacred relationship we have with nature, and therein actually lies our healing. Be it depression, be it anxiety, be it all of this, which of course has been exacerbated because of COVID, and plagues mental health issues, in mental health issues, what is it? 1 out of 5 Americans, at least, suffer from some kind of mental health issue. So all of this is a tremendously important thing. But, I think, again, you talk about it a lot in your show, is that this wholeness, right? What we are far more than just just our minds. We are our bodies, we're our hearts, we're our spirit as well. So really looking at that as a whole is tremendously important. And, Kanna is one of those amazing plants that starts to, connect you to that understanding, which is another reason why I chose to sort of build a brand around this.
Yeah, amazing. I love the story. Yeah, we are far more than isolated individuals. I remember a story a while ago from a Whitehead conference. He's a philosopher we like here on the show. A friend said he was chatting with a priest from the middle of Africa somewhere, and like he was asked that question, "How are you?" He's like, "Well, that's like not really a fair question, because like that for me means like I'm the sum total of all my relationships, and like that kind of thing. It's kind of like a nonsense question, because like, maybe my mother's sick, or, somebody lost their house in a fire or something. So like, I find that fascinating and a really important way to look at this stuff. Like we're really connected, and how we're doing depends a lot on how everybody around us is doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I love this idea of kind of safe, legal ceremonies using kind of a product that, as of right now, the government can't really get in the way of, which is amazing.
I mean, and thank you for bringing it up, because that was another reason I was like, I love psychedelics, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to start a company, what is more accessible for people that isn't maybe as intimidating, right? And so, Kanna is psychoactive, but not psychedelic. It's completely legal. It's non-addictive. And, what a great way to introduce plant medicine in a way to people. And what we did was we actually created a proprietary formulation centered around Kanna, but there's other amazing plants that are part of it as well, that essentially synergistically amplify the effects of one, amplifies the other. So, and we used, precursor alkaloids to elevate and prolong the functional phytochemicals in this proprietary formulation. So, and what's crazy is we actually, in this challenging process, we didn't, there's no sugar, there's no GMO, there's no caffeine, there's no calories, there's no artificial sweeteners, nor are there artificial flavors of any kind. And there is no, it's gluten-free, and there are no preservatives. So that was we got it to that level. And another thing is, personally, I was very, very adamant on bringing something to the world that's really 100% good for you, right? There's no compromise anywhere. And we also managed to create something that was pH neutral, which is unheard of. And so anytime you get gummies or anything, so it becomes it's anything that has sugar, it's acidic. So that's like pH of 1 or 2. Whereas this is your body's pH. So it actually, is great. And also it doesn't degrade. We managed to do this in a process where it doesn't degrade any of the plants, because we kind of invented a process where we don't use heat or cold in the production process. So it's a very much something that's alive when you take it in. And just to honor the amazing plant ingredients that are part of this.
Product formulation is going to be a big deal going forward. Like, I'm endlessly annoyed by the cannabis products available to me, and in legal sources, right? Like, I don't necessarily always want to be eating candy. Like, candy's cool, but like, maybe once a month. Like, I don't really want to be eating candy, and it's like there's a handful of companies who have solved that and made nice CPG like cannabis around it, but like consumer packaged goods, folks, is that acronym.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, when are we going to catch up and have nice things that are good for us? Not just like straight THC, CBD, etc. Like maybe some plant things in there, and
it's happening, and I think that a lot of education is needed for people, because people don't realize you can have certain ingredients that are okay, great, but then the minute I think there has to be a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into the formulation. If there's not enough science behind it, then literally you add a bit of sugar, it's gone. Its efficacy just is not there anymore, right? It's not done in a high yield kind of way. And so some of it, unfortunately, a lot of what's out there become placebos. They're just, yes, there's this and that, but it's not actually efficacious. So I think, programs like this and shows like this, I mean, just educating people is super important. And I think all of us need to learn. And especially right now, where there's, I guess, so much more of a movement towards self-directed healing, as opposed to, let me go to the doctor, right? Everybody's
right.
interested in taking fewer pharmaceuticals and actually more plant-based, or things that they can sort of figure out on their own and try on themselves.
It just came up for me. Like, is it that people are realizing that diet, sleep, and exercise and appropriate lifestyles are starting to be really important? Like, is that like a new discovery for the population? I think maybe. Like, it's ridiculous to say out loud.
No, but it's crazy. Like I have this same conversation with my chief scientist all the time. I'm like, what is like, why is it that people are only now just waking up to this? And I think I feel like COVID had a lot to do with that. And that's not to say like everybody's on the same page even now, but I feel like finally it's like, oh, wow, I have to notice what I put in my body, because who knows what other viruses come out. But it's not about sort of, in that moment, let me get a vaccine, or guess what? Health is a daily practice. It really is. So how do you strengthen your immune system throughout? And, and what is health? I think that's questioning too. It's like, we've all realized it's like, oh my God, mental health is so important. Not that, I mean, that sounds obvious, like you said.
It has massive implications for physical health. Like it's the same thing.
And because look what happened to all of us during the pandemic, getting shut in, right? Holy moly! So all of this. Sometimes we need to go through the experience to know what we're missing, and to make those connections and to connect the dots.
It's fair, yeah. And I think we need to see really, really tough situations in order to learn. I don't think many of us are quick studies, right?
Unfortunately, no. But I think, again, going back to what we're talking about, community, I think if nothing else, this has taught us how important being community and human interaction, and how much we need each other. It's fine when everything's going great and everybody's on autopilot and everybody's busy, right? But at the end of the day, what is it that actually really matters? And what do we actually need? And I think those are deep questions that I think many of us have explored in the last, 2-3 years.
So back to Kanna here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a plant. Is it a shrub, or what kind of plant is it?
It's a succulent.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. It's not endangered.
Okay, like what kind of growth timeline does it take? 400 years to grow? 2 months?
It's actually kind of a small shrub that grows a little bit slowly. So you can farm it. It grows in the wild in South Africa, but you can farm it. And I have to get back to you on exactly the growth cycles, but
let's plan on doing that in the blog later. I think that would be really cool to know more about the plant itself. And so do people traditionally, do they just boil it and eat it, or just
no, they chew it. They chew the roots, they chew it. And interestingly enough, in South Africa, Psychiatrists prescribe this a lot for people with depression. And
Wow.
also, it's, believe it or not, it's actually used to help people with addiction issues, with alcoholism.
Oh, wow.
Because again, of the way that mesmerione acts on neurotransmitters, it has almost an ability to kind of do a reset in your brain. Because, like, okay, what's more addictive than amphetamines? Fat, salt, and sugar, even. And again, most people don't realize this. And what's crazy
Explains my
is, and
relationship
not crazy,
with
what's
amphetamines. Well, yeah, totally.
and what is also really awesome is that Kanna actually curbs hedonic cravings. So hedonic cravings meaning, not the hunger that you need to survive. You got to eat to live, but anything on top of that. So, eating the whole pizza versus eating one slice. Yeah, and
there.
that,
Yep.
That is still a form of addiction. And, there's again, just amazing, amazing properties here. And what we've found is that, for example, with our Kanna Chews, people love taking it, for example, for meditation. Why? Because it helps you really drop in. It centers you, opens the heart, and kind of like, boom, you're an open channel and you're very sort of present. People love taking it, before a big work day because, instead of feeling overwhelmed, you can actually tackle one thing after the next in a calm way. And creatives love it because it actually helps when you're out of that fight and flight, everything expands, right? You start to see things, you start to see solutions, you start to see, oh, here's another way we can express this and do that and paint this. And so it's and on that side, it's great. Anytime working out even. So, people like to take to choose when they work out because of this ability of Kanna and a lot of these other plants to help improve endurance and actually help sustain energy. It helps people focus. So again, if you have crazy day, crazy mind, it's great to have you kind of go woomph.
How long does it last? Like the noticeable effect?
So, our chews have 30 milligrams of high potency Kanna extract in them. So you would typically feel it like really present an hour to 2 hours, but then slowly it kind of, tapers off. But honestly, the effects are still there for the rest of the day. It's just not as noticeable. So, we always encourage people to, choose your own adventure and just try it and see what works different times of day.
Yeah.
Best to take it on an empty stomach just to really feel it. And some people, depending on, because everybody's biochemistry is different, genetics are different. So some people need to try it, 2 to 3 times before the neuroreceptors get primed.
Oh,
so there's
that's
that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And yeah.
Can't wait to try it again.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
the scary question: contraindications. Mm-hmm. Like, are there certain types of people with different conditions you tell not to use it?
The only contraindication is if you are already on MAOIs and SSRIs. You don't want to add this to it because this is also a natural serotonin reuptake inhibitor. But if you're already on SSRIs and such, you don't want to add to that. Other than that, not really. And this is a big difference between Kanna and, let's say, CBD. CBD has a big long list of, you shouldn't take it with antibiotics or blood thinners or NSAIDs, and it's just alcohol, right? There's a big long list. There isn't that for Kanna. And what's interesting is if you are a cannabis user and let's say you get paranoid, too much weed, you get those rough edges, combining it with Kanna actually smooths the edges out. So they actually pair really well together, which you can find information even online about that, but it's a lovely pairing. You can have alcohol and still take it, but I feel like a lot of people, so for example, another use case is if you don't want to drink alcohol, but you want to have that sense of social ease, and you want to have that uplift, take some ka juice, because that's exactly what it does. It actually helps you break the ice and lower social anxiety, and again eases you. And it's also super good for you because it's actually neuroregenerative. So it's a great way to be healthy and yet have that sort of extra oomph when you go into a social situation, go out at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some, beyond cannabis, what are some of your other favorite ways of pairing it with something?
I honestly am a purist. I like it because it's already like formulated in a way that you can just have it as it is. So, I like it as it is. I think in a ceremonial setting, sometimes people have Kanna first, and you wait an hour and a half, and you have, your ayahuasca or something, or psilocybin or something else. But that's a ceremonial sort of psychonaut situation. But normally I would say no, because, why? I feel like we have, in this society, there's always this tendency to be more is better, right? Bigger is better, more is better. And that's not always the case. And that this is something that, because it interacts in a very different way and it brings you into your body, when you try it on its own, you'll get to see what I mean. And you really get to feel it. And you don't actually want to layer and layer and layer, because then you're like, okay, what's doing what? But, of course, people can try and experiment on their own. But, it has a very good safety profile, which is another great thing. And there's actually quite a lot of clinical research on this that you can find.
Great. I've heard very little about regulators trying to look at, or I've heard zero about regulators looking at this. So, kratom, natural product, traditional use case. There was some legal reasons why it became illegal. Competitive reasons why it became illegal, I believe. And I've not really heard this about
No, because
Kanna,
because you can get Kanna tea at Whole Foods. You
right.
can buy, there's, and it's not, we're certainly not the first people ever, put Kanna on the market. You can get it online and do it, whatever. But I think that, it's not, first of all, it's not hallucinogenic. It's not, it is psychoactive. So is coffee, right? Most people don't even know that. Coffee is considered a psychoactive. So, and, who knows, but but there's, I don't even understand why there would be a reason to do that, especially given the safety profile.
The drug war is a total fiction. For me, it's like really just made up. It's a great way to put people in prison, and targeted groups. That's why the United States created it, then exported it. But people believe it's a real helpful thing. It's not. So unless there was like a competitive reason, I can't really see why people would put any energy behind it, right? So the concept of who killed the electric car. People who had a vested interest bought all the IP and kind of it went away. So that can't really happen here. It's a natural product. You can't really trademark it. But you can make really cool formulations like you've made. That I think it's here to stay. Like I've heard some amazing things from a lot of people, but I've not really had personal a massive experience yet. But those who I know who have love it.
And I'm really glad to hear that from you, because it is, and of course, I hope so. I hope it's going to continue to, more people will continue to learn about it. And I do want to sort of, since we are on psychedelics today,
sure.
I do want to address one thing, which is that, there's been, Vice had that article comparing Kanna with MDMA.
Yes.
And I just wanted to address
that's the most basic comparison people make. But is it a fair comparison?
It's not. The only way that you can say, okay, it's similar is that, okay, MDMA acts like an entactogen. So there's an increase in empathy, and definitely you have that with Kanna, which, we're terming this category as empathogenics because it's a heart opening kind of category. But no, I mean, MDMA, first of all, is synthetic. It's a hallucinogen. It's a stimulant. When you take it, it distorts time and perception. Then there's, a ton of side effects. MDMA acts on dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and therefore it behaves like an amphetamine, which is highly addictive.
Well,
and,
it is an amphetamine.
It is an amphetamine.
Methyldioxymethamphetamine, a methamphetamine, which is even a scarier word for people. I like all kinds of amphetamines, but I hear you.
And is highly addictive. And the truth is behind that is that long-term use, you end up depleting your brain. It actually damages nerve cells that actually contain serotonin. Right. And it could, if prolonged sort of constant use, it leads to depression, possibly memory issues, and there's that. And it's not
harm reduction. PSA 4 times a year is a reasonable number of times for use, everybody. Not every weekend like I was doing. It's not good for you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not good for you. And, psilocybin, for example, psilocybin and Kanna are both neuroregenerative. It's the complete opposite to something like MDMA, which is, unfortunately, the opposite. And it does damage nerve cells in the brain. So that's just one thing to look out for. I just wanted to say that I think I understand why that people make that comparison, and it's, it has that sort of empathy, heart-opening feeling, but what it's actually doing and the mechanisms are very different.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. Like drug comparisons and substance comparisons are so hard. I regularly say something about 2CB. It's somewhere in between MDMA and LSD, and that's such an unfair comparison. It's such a different experience. And yeah. So like when we do comparisons, everybody, this is kind of just a PSA on terminology and language. Let's be really damn careful and think really carefully about what we're saying, because, we've perpetuated so many myths already throughout our lives, and we can stop it. We just have to be educated enough and have the intention when we're communicating to be really clear.
Absolutely. And again, I just wanted to say, I'm not saying one is terrible, one is so much better in this sense. This is not a value judgment. People absolutely have the right to do what they want. But just, I just wanted to kind of set the record straight. So, because people, it's easier sometimes to just to compare in the way I say, oh, it's just like this, and it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So just to have that
absolutely
nuanced understanding. Yeah.
Exactly. And we try not to do value judgment here too much. It's, but let's have fair comparisons and kind of pro cons list when we're trying to make good decisions. And when, do your own research, folks, but when you go look up the risk profile of, Kanna, you're going to be kind of curious, I think. At first I was like, the first person that told me was a university professor. She's like, yeah, we do ceremony all the time with Kanna. I was like, what? And you like it? Yes. It's like, what the hell? What the hell's going on? How do I not know about this thing? But, that was 4 or 5 years ago or something. So, I give myself a break. But, now I know about it. I've tried it. It's pretty cool. I can't wait to do more with it. I would love
I'm going to get you a box.
Hell yeah. I would love to see somebody actually kind of do a little trial with therapy. I think that would be really fun. Or do you know of any clinical papers that are out there?
There are many clinical papers. That's another topic. So you can find research that has been, quite a lot of research has been done on scaletium, which is the same as Kanna. And but I would love to. I mean, honestly, if anybody out there would like to do a clinical trial, or just somebody who is in psychotherapy, or any practitioner, I would love to see if we could collaborate and and do that together, because that would be amazing. I mean, we're at the end of the day, we're still we're a startup company right now, so we don't have like $20 million to do that kind of clinical study, but if there's someone out there that's interested, I'd love to share Ka
Great.
with them
Yeah.
and see what we can
It's
do
cool because
together.
it's already a standardized dose, right? It's not, perhaps not up to pharma standards, but at least you have a standardized dose and you can like study an
Oh, we
individual
do.
product. Okay, you are like GMP.
We well, here's the thing. There is the Kanna that we used, the Kanna extract that we use is extracted through a patented extraction process. So that we actually can say that there's a standard dose, a standardized extract and potency. So again, we're not a bioscience company. We're not biotech. We're not pharma, and we're a consumer product company, or a psychedelic adjacent consumer product company. But this is not just a bunch of people throwing a bunch of herbs together. I think I want to make that distinction. So
in the US, we call them trucker pills. It's just random pills you buy at a gas station on the highway, and they may work, they may not. I've heard that there is a lot of cathinones, like bath salts, being sold that way in the past, and it's fascinating because you can spin up a company, sell them at gas stations, convenience stores, and then close up shop and not get in trouble, and then move on to your next one. So like you're not doing that, but that is a thing over here.
No.
But yeah, obviously you're trying and you're doing some really cool stuff. So I love that. And yeah, like I've seen a few consumer packaged good companies do clinical trials. So like, I hope it works. And yeah, there's definitely researchers that love doing research. And if you don't need to go, you do it at a specialized lab and get DEA permission, like that's kind of pretty good. Makes research a lot easier and cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, God, I'd love to talk to you about this more as well. But but I also want to just since we're talking about this, if there's anybody out there who is interested, from a clinician standpoint, with their own patients, that's not an official sort of mega clinical trial, but that's at least a way that we can gather some solid empirical data. And it's a different kind of clinical study, I suppose.
Yeah,
I would welcome that. We would welcome that.
I think that'd be really cool. And there's plenty of researchers out there looking for cool things to do, and get funding for it from their organizations. And it's probably a lot less scary as a university researcher to go to your administration and say, hey, I found this product, looks interesting. They use it over in South Africa for XYZ, traditional use case. And why wouldn't we research it? It seems like a really obvious thing. So I would be expecting a lot more papers in the next 1, 2, 3 years on Kanna.
No,
specifically.
It's happening. It's happening, and there will be other companies that obviously are coming up with their own kind of products. And I think my sense is that we'll see more of them for sure. Yeah, and honestly, I'm happy that. And this is just one out of a gazillion, right? There's so many other plants out there that are amazing, and we're just really scratching the surface. And that's another thing that, we need to remember. The natural world is full of extraordinary healing plants.
Yeah. Jam-packed. I remember, I totally am spacing on what tradition this is from, but something like every single plant and substance on earth is here to help us. Somebody said something along those lines. And that's like a really fascinating way of looking at nature, right? It's
yeah. And we evolved with plants. We did, human species. And another thing is, sometimes when I even think of, we don't think of it, most people don't think of it this way, but that 95-6+ % of our cells are not even our cells. They are viral, bacterial, and we evolved with viruses and bacterium, and So instead of sometimes thinking, okay, how do we, I mean, we had to in order to survive, in order to coexist, right? And so I think it gives us a little pause sometimes when we think of anything that, instead of in the immediate reaction of let's kill it, let's eliminate it, let's destroy it. Wait a minute. Just wait a minute. What's a smarter way to do this, and how if we start to have a little bit of a different perspective, because otherwise we may end up creating bigger problems down the road.
Yeah. An example of this again, the United States has exported drug war. There's plenty of other things too. Yeah. So, what else here? So, can you give me like maybe one or two like really cool stories you've heard from customers about their use? So some like one or two things that kind of like blew your mind.
But I mean, okay, the first story, the first, incident was someone who is a lovely woman, menopausal age, and she has a lot of anxiety, a lot. And she, in order just to go to bed at night, she had to take like half a Xanax. The minute she was one of the first people who actually was part of our focus group, and she started taking our Ka-Chus, and she loved them. And also, maybe people don't know this, but when a lot of women, when they reach menopause, what also happens is not only the anxiety level goes up, sort of insomnia is an issue a lot of times as well. Loss of libido is an issue, and this is, taking our product, she was like, oh my God, this is so much better. I feel great. I have more energy. I can sleep at night. I definitely have far less anxiety. And she just stopped taking her Xanax. So that was an amazing story.
It's a really big win.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, this is great. Again, so we just have to say, if you are prescribed certain medication, do not go off of it unless you talk to your doctors, of course. But I'm just sharing the real story. And then, yeah, here are some sort of general highlights. People love taking it, like I already said, during meditation. There was a big shock when someone was taking it for a workout, and they're like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, I can actually lift more. I can do all of this more. I'm just trying to think of another great story. There are incidents, again, with people who have addictive personalities. This is something that, again, I've mentioned how it curbs hedonic cravings in general, and how mesobrine and mesembrinone actually help you reset your neurotransmitters in a way. So we've seen that happen as well, slowly, but it's happened. I feel a little bit cautionary in speaking too much about that right now.
Right. When we make medical claims or tell medical stories, obviously regulators are going to watch and be curious. So everybody, exactly. This is like anecdotal, like N of 1 stories, like maybe N of 5, but science needs a lot more N's before, you know, it's an approved thing and we can say much.
And again, everything that I've said with Kanna, you can actually look up in clinical studies. And we, as a company, Empathogenics, do not make any medical claims at all. So I just wanted to put that on the record. We're here to support. And, it's a herbal supplement at the end of the day. We're not pharma, and we don't intend to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but I think
this is a really important thing. So, like, a lot of people get held up, and the only way they're willing to try to raise money is if they go this biotech pharma route. And I think there's so many other ways to go. Do you have any examples? Like, I'm sure you thought about this biotech play once or twice, but like, why did you want to bring it to the people directly and not go through that path?
First of all, honestly, I was like, that's not my area of expertise. I
Yeah.
don't, and it goes, once it goes into biotech, it goes into pharma, it goes into, and I'm here to offer an alternative to that. I've always been a proponent of plant medicine, natural plant medicines. And by the way, just because something's natural doesn't mean it's necessarily great for you. Okay. But it's just, again, my whole ethos, which is what we look for a lot in terms of our own healing is in nature already. And instead of kind of trying to tease out, okay, here's the active component and let's just isolate this, patent this, put it in, and then make a drug. And then, that's to me, an old model actually. And what happens is then, from my perspective, and then this is just my perspective, the wholeness is lost. You talk, I think, not you, I'm sorry, what I mean is people talk about whole, you talk about whole foods, whole plants, there's sort of a similar aspect there as well. It's like, look, there's a reason why this particular plant evolved this way and it has all these properties. If you're just taking out one particular alkaloid or one particular chemical compound from it and then creating something else, you can do that. All the more power to you. And I definitely think that in certain circumstances that is, again, I say this, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, just from my own observation in my own life. There are certain incidences I want a pharmaceutical, absolutely. And then there's some incidences, especially when it comes to health maintenance on a daily basis, I don't want a pharmaceutical because it has multiple side effects, right? And it's toxic on some level. So then what is the best of both worlds? And I do want to say this because there's sort of pharma bashing that happens as well. And I don't want to, that's not where we stand either, because I think every healing modality has a place in our lives, right? So for example, you get hit by a car, you break your leg, you're not going to go and get acupuncture necessarily. You're going
Right.
to go to the,
it's not the first thing I want to do.
It's not the first thing you want to do. You're going to go to the trauma, section in the hospital emergency room, and they're going to patch you up. They're going to make sure you set your bones. Okay. Afterwards, you go to acupuncture to make sure after you've done the major portion of healing, then you want to do that to make sure all the energy is flowing right. And the auric and etheric body all of the energetic body has that part, to take care of that part as well. But you see, you cannot say, okay, one is bad and the other one is great. No, in certain, not, it's really
Context
having this
dependent.
integrative, context dependent and integrative medicine perspective is really important. Right. And so I think we come into this danger. I do want to speak to this because it's so easy, especially in today's world where it's like, okay, it's very us and them, this is right, that's wrong. If you believe in this, then great. If you don't, then you're like, the arch enemy. And that's totally not what this is about. And certainly not what, what Kanna and sort of the whole philosophy behind our company is about. It's really, and nor is it my personal philosophy. We have to come, no matter how much we disagree with each other, we need each other. We need to find a way to bridge that. We need to find a way to communicate. And we need to find a way to find that common ground because we do have that because we're human beings.
Desperately need it.
So, desperately needed.
So I'm going to ask you a fun cultural question.
Okay.
So given you've spent a lot of time in Hong Kong, I'm sure you're familiar with mainland China a bit. Like what should the larger psychedelic culture know, meaning like America, EU, about like bringing psychedelics into a place like Hong Kong, China, other than serious jail time? Like is there a cultural mismatch? I've heard some things like a guy came out of a psilocybin session and said, my culture is not ready for this. He's a mainland China guy. I forget what city or region he's from, but and I talked to another gentleman, John Cobb, who runs a big institute on this whitehead philosopher, who I actually asked him directly because he set up, I think he grew up in China. He's in California now, 36 schools in China teaching his work. And he's like, I'm not really interested in that for China. I think I want China to like rediscover its own practices. But he's 98 years old, so it's a different kind of generation. But curious on your perspectives on this whole kind of topic.
Sure. Just to qualify, I'm not mainland Chinese. I'm from Hong Kong. That's
Hong Kong,
also very different
absolutely super
culture.
different culture.
Just
Yeah,
super different. And, Hong Kong is in many ways much more westernized, has a different history. We were a colony, we're part of the United Kingdom until 1997. So for 100 years between, 1897 and 1997, we were under British rule. So there's that. And of course, you have a free market capitalistic system versus, communism in China, or at least socialism in China. And so I'm
sorry if this is a dangerous question too. I don't know how you're feeling about it.
I mean, it's not a dangerous question. I feel that what I found in life, no matter where you're from, the gentleman you talked about who's mainland Chinese, he said his culture wasn't ready for it, but he did it, right? So, I mean, I feel like why were psychedelics scheduled? Why did psychedelics become scheduled during the 60s, right? There's it's not the same, but you now have, it is very threatening to any society when suddenly people are waking up. They're like, oh, wait a minute. They can see through systems of control. They start to feel empowered. They start to look at life differently and no longer follow the prescribed way of how they should fit in. So I will take the stance of both that person and also of the government or the established authority. I can absolutely say if I was on the on the authoritarian side or on the authority side, I'd be like, okay, that is dangerous. That is threatening to our stability. That can be threatening to our existence. And then you obviously have the person on the other side, and it's like, no, this is personal liberation. This is really important for society to evolve, blah, blah, blah. So these two forces have coexisted in all of human history, really. What the context we're talking about today happens to be around psychedelics, right? So it is no different. And China being totalitarian, being that way, obviously it's not free in the same sense that a Western society is, but it's also strangely in many other ways freer than what people would think versus the Western culture.
And there's some very serious reasons for why that level of control is important in China too.
Yes,
like, I don't want to get too into that right now, but if the control disappeared, total bloodbath. Like the margin of there's some really seriously poor areas that would suffer so much, and like even the cities, there would be a lot of suffering if that all fell apart.
Exactly. And I just want to say also that, don't forget the Western media, the way it depicts current affairs, the way it depicts China is super biased. So, even coming from Hong Kong, I'd be like, what? Where is the what? And it's not just sometimes just not true at all. And it's just the way the narratives have been told. So that's kind of BS too, because honestly, like it doesn't even matter where, I look at media these days and it's so much of it is propaganda, no matter which country we're talking about. And so, I think that is one thing. And so there's already, just to begin with, a huge bias against China already. And I happen to have lived, I grew up in Hong Kong. I lived in many countries. I now live in Spain. And, I have humility in this. I learned to see, it's like, look, certainly not everything is as you see. And it requires a critical mind. It requires thoughtfulness. It requires exploration, research, and coming to your own conclusions. So this is a long way of answering you, but I feel like we're all human on a basic level. I do feel because of that, we want the same things. And yes, we may have different cultural heritage, but the basic human desire is there. We want to first and foremost be safe. We don't want to feel like we're going to lose our lives. We want to have food. We want to have shelter. The Maslow's pyramid, right? We want to have some sense of personal direction. The ability to have personal agency in our lives. We want to feel part of something greater. We want to have a purpose. This is all something we know. So, but then, of course, depending on which country you're in, all of that, the dynamics are very different, and how we live our lives and how we bump against those controls. This is the binary world we live in, and this is why being alive is like being in school on this planet all the time. We're constantly learning. We're learning as individuals. We're learning as societies. We're learning as nations. Each has its own level. But that's why we're here also. So I'm sorry if I didn't answer it directly,
No,
but that's
good.
Honestly what I think.
And I like it. Yeah. You brought up some stuff. When I was more forward about my new aginess, I always used to think about Earth as Earth school. So
totally.
Get put here to get put in school for 100 years or less, and come back with lessons for wherever we're from.
It's true.
And it's a cool way of looking at it. But yeah, it's thank you for sharing that. There is so much nuance that we need to unpack around this whole weird, I don't know, I call it empire games. There's a lot of bullshit that gets stuffed down into our minds just for power reasons. And that could be from pharma labs. It could be from, new age hucksters to cult leaders to governments and big business. So it's all over. And one of the biggest things we need to address and think about internally is that we're slightly evolved primates. Like this much more.
Yes.
And we're the ones with the sharp teeth, So we're not all that evolved, Think about how you talk to each other about political problems and how little evolution's there in your discourse with your friends and family about difficult topics, and including the drug topic, and including international politics, all of it. It's ugly. I'm guilty too. The amount of baggage I have, it's endless. So, but it's something we got to look at, right? I think that's tools like this can help.
Yeah. And that's something I think we, just to remind ourselves, again, that's why it's this is what brings us down to earth, right? It's there's humility in this. At the end of the day, we're all learning. We're all are flawed in our own ways. And, and so here we are. We're here on the journey of life. I feel that, I think I would say, one of the biggest things I've learned in my life, and one of the things just going through and creating Empathogenics, and also just working with Kanna, is that we are so much more in many ways than we realize that we are. We have so many how we can empower ourselves for our own healing that is there, and that plants can absolutely be our allies. And because we are part of nature, so are plants, and so we coexist together, and there's a reason, and there's a history, and that if that can help us and ease us in this difficult journey that is life, then hell's yeah, it's something to think about. And again, look, nothing, you cannot say one that, it's for everyone. Things, you cannot say anything in the world is for everyone.
Yeah.
But to actually give people the option and the opportunity to do so and to understand that there is more than what we may know. And this is one example of an amazing plant ally. Why not? And try it and see how it works for you. So it's more about your own exploration in your own healing that is giving each individual their unique journey that becomes their life, and not to make this so 50,000 foot view, but it's actually very practical. It's like, hey, what can we incorporate into our lives, incorporate into our bodies, to help with how we have to deal with an increasingly complex and stressful life. And, how do we stay grounded? How do we come back into community? So this is just one tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for that. That's a good way to bring it all together. So many tools. One of my favorite lines, Stephanie, is you can't clean a whole house with a vacuum. There needs to be multiple tools.
Exactly.
Here. And we're a little bit more complicated than a house.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So,
absolutely.
Not practical, just let's call it basic historical question. So your startup, you just launched a few months ago. You said in June, was it?
No, July, actually.
July
just a couple
22.
Months ago, fully.
Jeez. Yeah. Wow. I got an early sample. That's great.
Yeah, you did.
So, I think, I don't know. So where are you at? Are you trying to fundraise? Did you close any funding or?
We're in the middle of fundraising. It's been quite challenging. So we are absolutely we're in our seed round of fundraising at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah. And yes, so I'm busy doing, we're busy doing that and just getting and growing the company, growing our sales and, leading up to holiday. And, I encourage everybody out there who hasn't tried Kha to go to our website, ohmykha.com or empathogenics.com. But the fun way and the short version of that is ohmykha.com, ohmyka.com, to learn more about this. We're also on Instagram, kha.empathogenics, and we're also on TikTok. Same handle.
And the final question, Kha. What made you pick Kha? It's a loaded 2-letter thing. I had to do it.
Yes. No, thank you so much for asking. So we came up with that name because in ancient Egyptian, Ka means life force, literally. So, and, Ka not only are the first two letters, K and A, of first two letters of Kanna, but, I think Ka really, really encapsulates that life force energy into, because that's what we want to bring to the world. And our mission, by the way, is to restore full spectrum aliveness for all human beings. So full spectrum aliveness doesn't mean just the joy. I mean, the joy is a big part of it, but it's really not disassociating ourselves from any part of ourselves that makes us human beings. So that's why we talk about aliveness a lot. So you'll notice that the company is Ka exclamation mark. So that is an alveolar, and it's actually pronounced like a click. And Whoa. that is from the Khoisan heritage. And there are actually 3 different kinds of clicks, by the way. And so you have, and then you have another one, which I cannot do. And it's very specific to those languages. And we wanted to kind of have that in there to honor the indigenous roots of Kanna, obviously. And also just kind of to emphasize that, like, Ka, and there's that sort of mouthfeel as well. And so when you taste the chews, they're actually, because there's a whole bunch of other herbs, and one of them is akmela, which is amazing because it actually creates this massive tingle in your mouth. So you're like, whoa, what's happening in my mouth? And that sort of signals the, it activates the absorption process, and it actually signals that things are working and something's happening. And so there's that sensory aspect, which is why there's an exclamation mark. Ka also is, I believe, a unit. There's in multiple languages, it means something. And I believe it's a unit of electricity as well. I think it's, God, I can't remember exactly, but it's like a high unit of electricity, which is also like that electrical field, that life force giving aspect to Ka. That's also why. So, yeah, thanks for asking.
Oh, you got it. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for all your hard work. It's obviously a lot of passion behind it, and I'm loving the energy you're bringing to the project. So,
thank you.
Just glad to know you're out there doing this amazing stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Is there anybody else you'd want to shout out, acknowledgements, links, anything else as we close?
First, I want to acknowledge you, Joe. Thank you so much for bringing me onto this wonderful podcast of psychedelics today. And so glad we met at Trailblazers. Thank you, Trailblazers, for
thank you
for creating the opportunity for us to meet. That's like an amazing community as well. I just want to say a big thank you to you and having me on and giving me this opportunity to share more about this amazing plan and about Empathogenics, and just a big shout out to everybody else out there who's working with plant medicines, especially indigenous healers and teachers, and everybody else, any other entrepreneur that's bringing natural medicines, plant medicines into the world to help people heal.
That's how we have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. Let's chat for a few minutes after we stop here. And
yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you.